Hey Bonsai Society, David Easterbrook here. Today I have a real treat for you. Instead of working on one single tree, I'll be working on 7 trees. Actually, I'll be doing branch selection, how to choose the branches to create a good future bonsai design. Selecting branches for the future of a bonsai requires foresight and humility. Today, many are drawn to bonsai after a moment of awe sparked by a social media post. Enthusiasm fuels their eagerness, but soon comes the pang of missed years. The regret, if only I had started doing this earlier. There's a rush to acquire mature, costly bonsai trees, only to face the profound challenge of maintaining their elaborate form. Or perhaps they fill their carts at nurseries, captivated by fullness and foliage, forgetting that the tree's essence is in the flow of its trunk. The true spirit of a tree is woven into its very structure, timeless, impossible to replicate in a single season. Today is November 1st. Already I've brought most of my deciduous trees inside my storage area for the winter because we could get snow any day now. But it is also a really good time of the year to look at the structure of deciduous trees, even conifers, and to prune them so that they can become a good future bonsai. What I do at this time of year is I go around to local nurseries for 2 reasons. First of all, I can see the structure of the trees, and secondly, a lot of the trees are selling at a discount up to 40%, so I can get some good bargains on trees to work with. So today I've selected some trees that I've bought in the last month or two, but that said, what I do is I try to prune them and then let them grow for a year or two and prepare them for a future bonsai workshop. It's like speed dating today. I'll be quickly cutting off all the unnecessary branches, leaving only the really important main branches to become our future bonsai. Let's start with this Magnolia. It's a Magnolia Leonard Meisel. You always have to look for the roots. The main roots coming off the trunk are just here. Now, when I look at the tree, I see it at a more slanting style. It's got a younger trunk here, but the original trunk was here and it was broken off. So what I am going to do is I like unusual shapes. So I'm going to be growing it at around this angle. I'm going to keep this future trunk line here and create a semi-cascade style with this tree. So we'll start by removing some of these branches that aren't needed. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to shorten these branches, which means these are flowering buds, so we won't see many flowers in the spring. Flowering is secondary. The most important aspect of our bonsai is the future trunk line, is the shape of the tree. Flowers are secondary. Once we get the shape all bonked out and the tree in a bonsai pot, then we'll concentrate on getting this tree to flower again. One pruning scar that I would like to clean up here. I've created quite a few very large wounds here, in the back here, up here, and especially during the winter, they can become a portal for diseases getting in there. Also, they can cause dieback. So it's always better to cover very large wounds with cut paste to prevent diseases from getting in them. Any wound larger than, say, a 10-cent piece it's good to cover them. Anything smaller than that, they heal over pretty quickly, so you don't have to worry too much. Okay, so this tree is done. Let's go on to the next. Here we have a Cotoneaster. It's an old specimen with a thick base. It comes out of the ground quite beautifully, as you can see here. It's got a nice curve rising out of the ground. So with this tree we have two options. We can either use this trunk rising up to here and have a nice informal upright, or we could turn it to the other side and use this trunk and have a more dramatic curve. With this trunk, we don't have much taper in here. It goes from a very thick trunk to a slightly thinner, and we've got a straight section here. And I'm not crazy over that straight section. So I will be going to the lower trunk and keeping that. So I will begin by cutting away the upper section. Now we will be pruning away some lower branches that we don't need. Now this branch here is almost like a sucker. In fact, it probably is. We don't like very thick branches. It's inside a curve. So this one will be removed. Very thick sucker growth here. This one's coming off. This is a trunk that's died back. This one will be removed also. This here will be our top, and it will be wired, not today, but eventually be wired. So I want taper, so I want this part here. Now we will shorten some of these branches here. Again, they'll be wired downwards during the winter or in spring, but let's start by shortening them. This one is interesting, but much too long. We're going to cut this one back, cut this back, and finally this one back. And clean up the wounds, because the concave pruners leave wounds that are raised or V-shaped. We don't want those. We want a wound that's really concave, that goes into the bark, into the trunk, so that when it heals over, we don't see the wound. It's always better also for the wound to be slightly turned inwards so that the bark can roll over it. I've cleaned up our wounds. Now for the cut paste. There we go. Second tree down. 5 more to go. These are really interesting. I don't know why more people don't grow Ilex bonsai. They're just a fabulous tree to work with. They bud back well. They're relatively fast growers, and I found a few specimens with very interesting trunks. When you're working on these trees, you turn the trunks all around to find the best trunk movement. Over here we have a straight section. It divides into two. Again, I'm always looking for trunk lines, so I think I will go up here and into this section here and then cut it back. I'll be keeping the holly branches for my wife's Christmas decorations probably. Now there is a certain dieback. You can see up here how when this was cut back, it died down by about 2 inches. So I'm going to leave a bit more rather than a bit less. I'll just clean up 1 or 2 of the cuts, and we'll cover it with cut paste. As you see, I'm working with female hollies. in order to get berries, it's a dioecious plant, so you need a male holly also to pollinate the female. You don't have to train it as a bonsai. All you have to do is have one around that flowers at the same time as the female. This one here, the cultivar of this holly is called Red Sprite, and she can be fertilized with several different cultivars, either Mr. Poppins or Jim Dandy, or pretty well any other male that you have around. This one is done. Our third tree is down. Now I could have cut it shorter, all right, but I always like to leave a few smaller branches with vegetative buds to pull the sap upwards. In the spring, this should start sending out adventitious buds, new growth along the trunk, all right? And then, depending on where the new branch comes out, I can cut it back shorter to get even more extreme taper, and I probably will do that. Here we have another deciduous holly. Again, the same cultivar, Red Sprite. This one has a real nice curvy trunk. Maybe not quite as fat at the base as the previous holly, but still, it's a really pretty curvy trunk. What I go after is beautiful shapes, more than anything, not trunk thickness. I like trunk movement. That is so important. I could go up this trunk into this as the future top, but this is a bit thin, and this one is a bit thin. So I think I'm going to go a little bit higher and maybe choose about right here as the future top. I want new growth coming out at the base of these branches that I will train as my future branches, because these are much too thick. I'm not going to keep these. So, but I will leave a stub, okay? So that when it dries back, there'll still be some live cambium there to send out new buds. So we'll start by cutting some of these thicker branches. And now here we've got a very straight line that's not very interesting at all. So as I said, I think I will make this smaller branch here as my future apex. I'll cut a little bit higher than that branch in case there's dieback. We'll trim some of the smaller branches that we don't need. This is partially dead. Here we've got not a very good pruning scar from a previous pruning. The Felco pruners sometimes leave, this one's pretty clean. This one we've got some bark. We want them to heal over. And this one, that's pretty clean, but I can redo it. Okay, well, let's treat this one with cut paste now. As I say, they're vigorous growers. In the spring, they send out a lot of new growth. You can create bonsai one of two ways. Either by growing bonsai from young seedlings or cuttings, and there you have complete, total control over the future, the design of your tree, the movement of your tree, which is pretty cool. But it takes an awful lot of time, and especially for older guys like me, I don't think I'll be around to see the results. The second way of creating bonsai is the reduction method, is really finding older trees, either at nurseries, plant nurseries, garden centers, or collecting them in the wild, and then reducing the size and keeping the essential, the basic shape of the tree, the inside of the tree. Obviously, you have to be pretty, how could I say, discriminatory when you're choosing trees. You have to really find interesting trunks when you're doing that, okay? That said though, bonsai is considered the art of pruning, okay? And solely through pruning, you can create a really magnificent bonsai. You can create, you don't a lot of trees don't even need to be wired. Just by pruning, you could create really magnificent specimens. In southern China, they used to use the lignan method, which means let it grow and then clip it back. Grow and clip, grow and clip. So that's all that's needed to create great bonsai. Okay, so we've got 4 trees down. This is a Potentilla, okay? It's actually in the rose family, and they're native to North America. Although this one here is a cultivar that has pink flowers, the species has yellow flowers, all right? And they can be found in very cold climates. I was, many years ago, I was mountain climbing in British Columbia and came upon some Potentilla with really thick trunks that were ground hugging. Pretty impressive. So you can find them quite far north too, and at higher altitudes. They make great bonsai. The only disadvantage is they're like vaccinium. They're like blueberries or ericaceous plants. The sap seems to rise up in sort of tendons, in sort of ribbons. And if you cut a big branch off, sometimes all that ribbon of bark right down to the roots will die. So you have to be very careful with what you prune. The thing about Potentilla, okay, or cinquefoil, cinq means 5 in French, so cinquefoil shrub means 5-leafed shrub. The thing about them is they are shrubs, and when I go visit nurseries, I would say maybe 2 shrubs out of 100 have a single trunk. Most of them are all multi-trunk. You can't do anything with them in bonsai. But if you can find a single trunk like this one, then you're all set. It's great. So let's work on this one a bit, prune back what we don't need with this tree. Okay, our future shape is going to be up here and then up here, and our apex will be here where my hand is. This will be a lower branch. This one here will be a lower branch, and this I might keep part of it. I don't like a back branch as my first branch, but until the tree fills out, I do want something in behind. So I'll keep a bit of it as a first branch in the back. Although, as I say, eventually I will remove it. Now, I will remove some of the dead or dried out foliage inside. You have to watch out for that with these trees. They do have a tendency to have some branches dry out. Now we're just going to cut back all the overlong branches. They do bud out quite well from older wood, so we don't have to worry too much about that. They need a lot of sun though, so they won't bud back well unless they get sufficient sunlight. And because they're summer flowering, you can prune them in the spring and you'll still get flowers, contrary to many other bonsai subjects. Just this week I was giving a lecture on how to choose a nursery tree as a future bonsai, and I told people that they should always choose more trees rather than less. Why? Because I think you should have a bank of trees at the ready in your collection. Trees that you're preparing to be future bonsai. It helps that when you have these trees hanging around your home, every time you water them, you get a new perspective on the shape of the tree, new ideas on maybe I was wrong, maybe I should choose another shape or something. And gradually we prune back the branches, gradually we'll prepare the tree to be a future bonsai, either by opening up spaces between branches, or we can tie them down. Just use a guy wire to tie them down to let the light in. That's really important. Okay. Let's get some cut paste on this tree so that we don't have a branch that dies back on us. Okay, so here this tree is done. We'll be starting on our next project. This here is a Scots pine, Pinus sylvestris. They originate from Europe, but it is a cultivar. It's a slightly dwarfer cultivar called Bouvronensis. I think it was created or found in England quite a while ago. Now, I did buy this not from a nursery, but a local bonsai guy that had discovered the nursery. He actually cut off the top. You can see that the top was quite a bit taller. It was another 5 or 6 feet taller, and the top was cut off here. Except I find the tree is still much too high, so I am going to reduce it even more and then reduce the branches. Now, I do have a choice of creating a gin, but usually with nursery growing pines, you never create gins because they're growing so quickly that the growth rings are quite far apart and the wood rots very quickly. So I will leave a stub because they do bleed quite extensively, although this is a good time of year to work with pines because the trees are or have gone dormant, so there's less sap loss at this time of year. Now this will be the future trunk line here, up into here. Now this part here is also ugly, so we're going to prune off this here. So now you see our top here, all right? And let's shorten the branches. Now it's not going to look like much until it's wired this year, but at least you're going to see what it is going to look like in the future. We're not going to prune them back completely because, as I say, they do lose a lot of sap. So it's better to leave the stubs sometimes for a couple of years. When you see that they've dried out, then you can remove them. Like this one here and this one here is dried out, so I can remove them completely now. Here, we're going to have our first branch. It's too long and straight. It'll be wired with copper wire and curved. We have a back branch. In fact, we have two over here. I prefer this one, but it's quite long, doesn't have much inside branching, so we'll wait. If it buds out in the spring, I'll keep this one. If not, I have another good one here, a backup that's really nice. My second branch up here is a little bit weak up here because it was shaded out. It was shaded out by this big branch. Now that it's in the open, it should pick up strength here. It'll take a while, okay? And then the upper branches are all there in the right places. It's really, really, really imperative when you are dealing with pines to cover the wounds with cut paste, so I will do that right away. Sometimes I'll do it with liquid and then I'll cover it with a thicker cut paste. But I like the liquid, especially if there's a crack, I can force it into the cracks. Now this formative pruning is very, very beneficial to the tree in the sense that by opening it up, getting the light in there, the branches that I've left will gain strength. They'll be getting more light, and we'll see some pretty dramatic results. They'll become much stronger, okay? And with good light and good fertilization, we'll also be expecting some back budding along some of these branches. A lot of pines don't back bud at all, but Scots pines sometimes do, amazingly enough. So I'll be hoping that I'll get some back budding. If not, they're relatively easy to graft also. This branch is a bit too long and with not very much side branching. So I would like some back branching, some back budding along here. This one also very important to get some back budding here. If not, I'd graft a little bud here and one on this side. I've got a nice thick trunk. That's what's really important for me because I don't have any time to lose at my age. Okay, so now we've got the 6th tree done. Now we'll be doing some severe pruning on the final tree. This is another magnolia. This one is Magnolia liliflora Susan. I already have one in my collection as Susan. They make great bonsai, but when I bought this, my wife said, oh, I don't want you to make this one into a bonsai. I want you to plant it in the garden. I don't think she'll be very happy when she finds out that it's not going into the garden, that I'm doing it just for you guys. Keep that in mind and subscribe, okay? Because, yeah, I do have to come up with good material for these YouTubes. Let's decide what we want as the front of the tree. We can either go with this branch, just this branch here, as the future apex of our tree, or we can go a little bit higher and use this one here as the apex of our tree. I think this branch is a little bit narrow to be the future apex. This one here is too long and not much side branching on it. This one also the same thing, too long, not much side branching. Mind you, if I cut them back, they would bud back, but I think I'm going to go with this branch here, right here, as my future apex. The front of my tree will be right here facing you, and I have left a back branch for two reasons. First of all, I wanted a thicker base so I can bend it down slightly and use it as a sacrificial branch to thicken up the base, or I can always bend it to the side slightly and create sort of a two-tree, a socan tree. Well, let's get it cut pasted. Did you know that magnolias were for a long time considered to be the first flowering tree on the face of the earth? It was only about 20 years ago that they discovered a small shrub in Australia that they actually think was the first, before magnolias. But magnolias are a very, very ancient tree. They date back almost to the time of the dinosaurs. They're great to use as bonsai because they have a very sweet smelling bark or sap. I really enjoy that. Their flowers are gorgeous, sometimes too large, or the proportions are too large for a bonsai, but that really doesn't bother me because generally they tend to flower in the spring before they have leaves. And their fruits are really interesting too, a beautiful reddish orange color. Their seeds, I shouldn't say fruits, their seeds are really great. The only problem we have with them in Montreal is they're very susceptible to a very large size insect. It's a mealybug that's so large. Sometimes they measure about an inch in size, and that's discouraged some people from growing Magnolia bonsai. I've never had it on any of my bonsai. I don't worry about it at all. Now, this one is completed. They all look pretty skeletal after they've been severely pruned. That doesn't bother me. As I say, this is the initial or formative pruning, okay? And now we're going to let it grow out next year, and then the year after, that's when we can wire down the new growth to create a beautiful bonsai. So have patience, folks. Take your time. Don't rush your future bonsai. Take the time to grow them slowly and let them develop gradually. In the meantime, water well, fertilize well during the summer, during their growing period, and you should have a great bonsai collection. So good luck, folks. That concludes today's 7-tree speed pruning session. We did work today on this wonderful Leonard Magnolia in a semi-cascade style, this Cotoneaster, which will be an informal upright, these two winter berries here, Hollies, that are both going to be informal uprights, this wonderful shrubby cinquefoil or Potentilla. We also worked on this Scots pine, the Bouvrenensis cultivar, and finally I worked on this Magnolia liliflora Susan. If any of them particularly interested you, let me know. Leave a comment, and I would be ready to work it further in the spring, to wire it and have to work on the root system, repot it. But if you're interested, just leave a comment, and we'll have a vote or something. We'll work on one of these in the spring. So thanks a lot for now, folks. We'll see you soon. To those beginners, I offer this reminder. Bonsai is not a sprint. It's a journey, an art that requires time to unfold. The deeper you tune into a tree's character, its shape, needs, and rhythm, the more you'll find yourself harmonizing with its life. There's no instant masterpiece in bonsai, just as Rome wasn't built in a day. Every cut, every repotting, every styling is but a step in a journey without end. Each decision, a stone in the path. Allow your work to take shape gradually, respecting each season, avoiding haste. Remember the times life has tested your own endurance and strength. A tree mirrors this resilience. In the quiet work of bonsai, both tree and caretaker grow together, bound by patience and time.